Hello, my name is Maryam Ghoreishi, a guest curator at Center for Book Arts for their winter exhibition Out of Sight, Beyond Touch. Sight Beyond Touch is a group show featuring works by Amina Ahmed, an artist based in New York, Shirin Saleh, based in Madrid and New York, and Masume Mohtadi and Bahman Mohammadi both live and work in Tehran, Iran. The common thread among these works is the book as a medium, concept, visual, or historical reference, with an emphasis on the ways that one might perceive the artwork. In this exhibition, I aim to remind the audience of the critical role of the sense of touch in the process of understanding. As a researcher in haptic technology, Mark Patterson has argued, quote, within an academic climate that celebrates visual cultures and the popular media's infatuation with visuality, touch remains largely neglected, forgotten. And when I talk about touch, I mean all forms of touch, which includes our perception of mode, location, state, movement of the body in space, or perception of balance, the location of our head and our acceleration rate. Also, what we feel in our muscles and joints when we move. And of course, the cutaneous form of touch, which is related to skin, what we feel on our skin, such as pain and change of temperature or different textures. Talking about this matter, in other words, the criticism around the dominant role of the sense of sight isn't something new. There have been cognitive scientists, psychologists, artists, and philosophers that have explored the relationship between touch and sight, eyes and hands, and the role of these two senses in determining how we perceive our bodies, objects, and surroundings in general. For example, Constance Classen is critical of the visual dominance in our age and describes the sense of touch as the hungriest sense of postmodernity. Martin J. calls the cultural and historical emphasis on sight in the West ocular centrism, which he argues, has led to the negligence of the sense of touch. Besides all this academic research, I think that all of us would agree that this visual dominance has been developed during the last year when we all have experienced lockdown and pandemic. Because most of us have experienced a lack of physical interactions and spent hours and hours staring at the screens and monitors. So I believe that Out of Sight, Beyond Touch has been an opportunity to think about this matter and experience it. Having this as a conceptual framework of this exhibition in mind, I'd like to start this tour by introducing the reading section. It contains different books that the artists or I have used and some other books from the center's collection related to the concept of this show. And this piece, as you see, is by Ramiar Vala, a New York-based artist. Ramiar's practice is usually the intersection of art, design, and craft. For this show, visitors can sit on this bench and explore the books. Now let's enter the gallery and explore each series with a more detailed scope explanation. As you can see, the presentation of the works is displayed in a way that engages both senses, touch and sight. And since each artist delves into a different subject matter, I'd like to talk more about each series presented in this exhibition and also about the conceptual relationship between them. Let's start with this series that you see now, Protozoan Self-Portrait by Bahman Mohammadi. These works have been made through a 4 to 9 year process. Around 2010-11, Bahman started reading a book about the evolution, which led him to delve into this subject and read various theories about it. According to him, he usually refuses to take a theory as a starting point for his artistic practice. But this time, the role of accident in the evolutionary path triggered him to do something more than reading. So he ended up turning his studio into a kind of lab studio. According to him, quote, these discoveries have moved the man slash me further away from their central position in the world and indicate that there is a minuscule evolutionary gap between the Homo sapiens and a small insect or even a protozoan. That said, each of these pieces that you see could be Bahman's self-portrait, or I can say a possible self-portrait of each of us if the evolutionary path had taken another way. In this context, when we talk about accidents, time also has a significant role. Both these factors have been embodied in the making process. So here I'd like to talk a bit about this process, which is a combination of accident and the artist's manipulation throughout time. Bahman uses for the beginning, he uses medium density fiberboard, which are made by breaking down hardwood or softwood combined with wax and resin binder, and is formed into panels by applying to temperature and pressure. So he takes them and uses acrylic to paint on these wood blocks, and then he puts them in water and exposes them to sunlight and different temperatures for different periods, sometimes a week, sometimes several months. The shapes of these panels are transformed and they become kind of soft and fragile. And here, the artist's role is to control this transformation so that they won't be completely destroyed. He manipulates the shape by pressure. And this cycle might be repeated for years. And at the end, he uses glue or wax to fix them. Sometimes he glues them together, like the thicker pieces, the one that was next to the wall text, or the other one, the thick one. And like this one, as you see, sometimes he separates the wood layers. That's why they have different thickness. For him, the book is like a piece of scientific evidence. And according to him, again, he hadn't planned to form them like a book. But when they turned into like book-like object, he found this resemblance to the book exciting and related to the concept and idea of this series. This is one of those thick ones when he glues different wood panels together. So I can say that the idea started from a book, and the final products, these objects at the end look like books. And these circles that you see on some of them imply forms of portrait. They are not completely like portrait, but they kind of refer to a shape of portrait. And most of them, all of them have same size, 4.5 by 8 inches, which for me implies our collective experience throughout the evolution. Now, let's move forward to Masoum Mohtadi's books. This series, Metamorphosis, contains two different series of books. Different in terms of their form and making process. The origami one and the interwoven books. Aligned with Derrida's theories, particularly his statement on words as the, quote, origin of misunderstandings, unquote, Masoum intends to challenge the absolute nature of language. In this series, either by replacing the conventional structure of language with origami, or by dismantling this structure through cutting off the pages and interweaving them. So I'm going to start with this red one. Each of them, the primary source for each book is a novel. This one, Heart of a Dog, a novel by Russian author Mikhail Bulgakov. The black one on the left side, Rhinoceros, a play by Egon Ionesco. And the white one, Blindness by the Portuguese author Jose Saramago. This is the Blindness. And the last one, a novel called Cow, which has been written by Iranian author Gholam Hossein Saedi. She believes that in the same way that words create a language, the folds of a paper create full origami structures. Each origami originates from a square, and with each fold, a new object is created. To make these books, she picks a word from each book and makes the actual origami, such as a dog or a rhinoceros. She takes photos of each step and each fold. In other words, she documents this process as a visual reference. But to make these origami books, as you see in these pages, instead of folding each page, she cut them. So when you flip the pages, you could see the transformation and metamorphosis of forms from one page to another. As she says, a quote, "Here, it is not a matter of being able to read and understand the origami language, yet of contemplating the content which is transformed page to page." Now I'm going to talk a bit about these interwoven books. Next to each origami book, there is an interwoven book. This is Heart of a Dog. In this one, Masume uses both Farsi and English translation of the book. You can see Farsi alphabets and English alphabets. She cuts the pages and interweaves them. We can go to the next one, the black one, Rhinoceros, the interwoven book next to that. In this one, she uses the English translation of Rhinoceros along with Blindness. She cuts out the blank and white parts and interweaves the rest of it. If we go to the Blindness, for this one, she uses the blank parts from the previous book that we just saw, and she again interweaves them together. So it's just blank pages, as you see. You barely see any text in that. It's just blank pages. And the last one, which is my favorite one, Cow. For this one, Masume uses the Farsi version. There's no English translation of this book, but there is a well-known Iranian movie based on this novel. So the images, if we go closer, the images that you see have been taken from that film negative. So it's a combination of text and images. In this book's metamorphosis is seen through the act of cutting and interlacing the text on each of the pages together. And while some English and Persian words are left and still kind of readable, The interwoven books create an expansive chain link of signifying connections, enabling a new metamorphosis in the reader's imagination. For her, metamorphosis implies that the meaning of a text changes and morphs through reading and rereading, and from one reader to another. So the metamorphosis of a story, language, and the origami's geometric shapes are trilateral embodied in her works. Now, let's go to Shirin Saleh's works, a series called Back from a Walk, inspired by the poem with the same title from the book Poet in New York, 1929 to 30, by a Spanish poet Federico Garcia Lorca. This poem became a main inspiration with Shirin's spiritual experience in 2017 in New York. The recitation of it led her on a new journey towards fresh ways of conjuring the soul when cornered by noise and crowds. During the process of making her art, she repeats the narration and this simultaneous writing in a cycle and in various fragments. While she uses different languages, Persian, Spanish, and English in her works, similar to Masume, Shirin challenges the act of reading. According to her, the presence of secrecy and the gesture of concealment is very significant to her work. She believes that it will be precisely in this not showing everything where we can play language games and perhaps create other possibilities for producing meaning. If we go through this one, the scroll, covered. So in this one, she challenges that act of reading by covering part of the piece by this fabric. This piece is called Poems of Solitude in Columbia University, 2019, which is copper etching on Japanese paper. And it has 3 editions. This is the 3rd edition. The next one, she uses embossed print, which makes the text difficult to read. Even if we go closely, it's difficult to read the whole text. And this one is called Poems of Solitude in Columbia University, another version. And the other one next to that, by using white ink on these white papers, and also by rolling them, still, it's difficult to read the text. And the next one is still the same, which is in the frame. It's again embossed on these papers. And next to that, there are 2 frames, which are some fragments of the text. From the series Back from a Walk, Clay Fragments, 2018. There are some Farsi text, Persian text, but it's still difficult to read. And if we go to the last part, for example, this one, Sacred Letters, on the left side. So she kind of hides this letter in the clay. So again, we cannot read the whole text. And the next one, Veiled Letters, 2019, copper etching on Japanese paper. Concepts such as memory, silence, and mystery are embodied in her artistic exploration. Shirin's intention is to remind us of the concept of say no, which is the main concept in her practice. And say no implies a sign left by someone that reflects the need to leave marks and memories rather than a desire to do that. So we can say all this text for her is kind of a say no, a remark, a mark of someone. Now we can go to Amina's works. As you could see, some of her works are available to see and touch. So the audience's understanding is formed by both senses, touch and sight. For example, this one on the left, Pauline holding, I want to read the whole title of her works because I think this is one of the important part of her works. Pauline holding, filtering what stays inside. When I remember her hands moving, I think to myself, only velvet feels like velvet. This is an altered book, velvet binding and cotton thread, made in 2008. And the next one, the title is, Did you read my letter? You didn't respond. It was registered mail. The canopy above us has a massive hole. The rivers are running red. A world without a tent. Please respond. This is again an altered book and a mirror. If you see, there is a small piece of mirror at the end of the hole. And this is made in 2008. And the other one, I rolled your letters into one and dipped them in water. This is also made in 2008. Paper, ink, and gauze. So she made this for one exhibition when during the exhibition, she actually put them in water. So you can see the ink spread over the pages, yeah. The rest of her books from the series Unfurling Iqra, Only Velvet Feels Like Velvet, 2016 to 2018, which are embossed books on paper and graphic with velvet binding and cotton thread. These are placed in these sealed cases. So as you see, audiences are encouraged to put their hands in and touch the books. Each page has embossed drawing. Here, with emphasis on the sense of touch and its essential role in understanding and perception, visitors have a tactile experience, and they are invited to respond to their experience and feeling through writing, drawing on small papers next to each sealed box. There is a quite well-known question in the philosophy of perception known as the Molinex question about a person being born blind, knowing everything through the world of touch and were suddenly able to see. Would they be able to recognize objects and shapes by sight alone without touching them? Or is there transfer from one sensory modality to another? Here for Amina's work is a transformation from touch to vision. And there are some evidence of prioritized relation between vision and touch in the brain. What I see in common between Shirin and Amina's work is the concept of concealment and mystery. And if we take a broader view, all these artists evoke and activate the audience's imagination. I'd like to wrap up this tour by reading part of Amina's statement because I think it highlights the main concept of this show. Outside the oral tradition, the book is never just about the story as seen. It's about the story through the tactile experience of that medium. The narrative of a book lies within the participatory element and within memories that remain invisible as they pass through the hands of many. The holders, however unknown to each other, remain part of the pages as a record of the primal instinct of an experience, marking through the sensory in a visceral and practical need to touch.